The stars in the Orion Arm shimmered quietly, like lanterns hanging in the dark. Among those stars floated many civilizations, each unique in culture, shape, and thought. Most of them had known peace for many centuries. They lived in harmony, building great cities of glass, trading knowledge, and exploring the mysteries of the cosmos. But peace is a fragile thing. It can be broken by even a single shadow. That shadow came in the form of the Krail Marauders. They were not builders or thinkers. They traveled from world to world, stripping planets of resources, burning the land, and enslaving any who resisted. They were feared not because of their brilliance, but because of their cruelty and numbers. For countless years, the coalition of peaceful races had avoided direct battle with them, always retreating, always giving ground. On one quiet cycle, a new cry echoed across the deep void of space. It was a distress signal, sent from a small green world on the edge of the coalition's border. The message was short, filled with fear. Help us. They are here. Please, someone help us. The coalition leaders gathered in the grand chamber of the Stellar Council, a place filled with glowing lights and translucent walls. Representatives from many species sat in their floating seats. Some were tall and graceful, like the Veyari, whose thin limbs shone under the light. Others were stout and colorful, like the Trin, covered in scales that changed colors with emotion. All of them looked uneasy. The voice of the signal still played in their minds. The Krail have reached another world, said Counselor Yaren of the Veyari, his voice trembling. We have no fleet strong enough to oppose them. Our ships are for exploration, not destruction. A Trin delegate shifted in her seat. We cannot keep running. But who among us can fight them? We are not warriors. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then an old voice spoke. It was Counselor Dreth, a historian of the council who had spent his life studying records from forgotten times. His scaled hands tapped the table as he accessed old archives. A faint hologram appeared above him, showing a planet with blue oceans and green continents. There is one species, Dreth said slowly. Long ago, explorers recorded their world. It was unlike any other. They called it Earth. The room grew still. Few had heard the name before. Earth? Yaren repeated. What is special about it? Dreth enlarged the image, showing storms raging across its oceans, volcanoes burning, deserts stretching wide, and thick jungles alive with danger. This world is what we call a death world. Life there fights for every breath. The air, the beasts, the storms, even the ground itself, everything is a challenge. And yet the creatures of this world did not perish. They grew stronger. They adapted. They survived. And their people? Asked the Trin delegate carefully. They are called humans, Dreth answered. His voice carried both respect and caution. Humans live in a place where danger is normal. Their history is one of struggle, invention, and endurance. They have fought among themselves, survived disasters, and still pushed beyond their skies. They are not like us. They do not flee from hardship. They rise to meet it. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Some were impressed. Others were afraid. But they are dangerous, one counselor whispered. If they can survive a death world, what chance do we have if they turn against us? Dreth shook his head. They are not only dangerous, they are also capable of great loyalty. The records show acts of compassion as strong as their acts of survival. They protect their own fiercely and sometimes even strangers. The council fell into debate. Some argued that inviting humans into their conflict would only bring greater chaos. Others insisted that no other hope remained. The Krail would not stop. If no one stood against them, the coalition's worlds would fall one by one. Finally, Counselor Yaren raised his voice. If these humans are as resilient as the old records claim, then they may be the only ones who can help us. It is a risk, yes, but is it greater than the risk of doing nothing? The chamber fell silent again. The answer was clear. The decision was made. The coalition would reach out to Earth. Far away on that blue planet, humanity was unaware of the debate among the stars. On Earth, people were living their ordinary lives. Cities buzzed with traffic, scientists worked in their labs, children played in green fields, and explorers mapped new frontiers beyond their moon. They had already built ships to touch the edges of their solar system. They dreamed of spreading further, of reaching new horizons. On one quiet night above the clouds of Earth, a small coalition envoy ship appeared. It was shaped like a crescent of silver, almost invisible to the human eye. Inside it, the alien envoys prepared a message. They felt fear in their hearts. What if the humans rejected them? What if the old stories were wrong and humans chose to conquer rather than help? The envoy leader, a gentle being named Cyrell, looked out through the viewing port at the glowing world below. Her translucent skin shimmered in the dim light, her large eyes reflecting both hope and worry. "Are we ready?" one of her companions asked. Cyrell nodded slowly. "We must be. The Council has placed its trust in us. We must speak to the humans, not as rulers, but as equals. Only then will they listen." The ship activated its communication systems, sending a carefully crafted signal toward Earth's satellites. The message was simple, filled with respect. "To the people of Earth, we are travelers from the stars. We come with no harm. We come with a plea. Others are in danger. We ask for your help." On the surface of Earth, scientists at observatories froze as strange readings appeared on their screens. At first, they thought it was an error, a trick of the instruments. But the signal was clear. It was not natural. It was intelligent. And it was speaking to them. The news spread quickly across the planet. Governments were alerted, leaders gathered, and ordinary people watched their screens with wide eyes. Humanity, for the first time, was being called upon by another world. In every heart, a question began to form. Would they answer? And high above, the coalition envoys waited in silence, holding their breath, hoping the Deathworlders would heed their call. The message from the alien envoys spread like fire across Earth. At first, many refused to believe it. Some thought it was a trick, a hoax created by governments or pranksters. But when the message was verified again and again by scientists across the world, the truth could no longer be denied. Humanity was not alone. In every city, people filled the streets, staring at giant screens showing the translated words, "We come with a plea. Others are in danger. We ask for your help." The leaders of Earth quickly gathered. Representatives from powerful nations, space agencies, and scientific communities met in secure halls. Their faces were serious, their voices low, but their eyes betrayed both fear and wonder. For generations, humanity had looked at the stars and wondered if someone was out there. Now someone had knocked at their door asking for help. The first question was simple. Could they trust these aliens? President Alvarez of the South American Union leaned forward in his seat. "This may be a trap. We know nothing about them, nothing about their motives. For all we know, they may be preparing to conquer Earth." Across the table, Chancellor Ito of the Pacific Alliance shook his head. "Perhaps. But what if they are telling the truth? What if there are indeed innocent worlds being destroyed? If we turn away, what will that say about us as a people?" The debate stretched for hours. Some leaders urged caution, others spoke of morality and duty, but all agreed on one point. They could not ignore the aliens completely. Humanity needed to know more. And so a plan was made. A carefully chosen group of astronauts, scientists, and diplomats was selected to meet the envoys. They were trained not only in space travel but also in negotiation, body language, and history. Among them was Captain Elias Ward, a decorated pilot known for his calm mind and steady courage. He was chosen to lead the human delegation. When the day came, the world held its breath. A shuttle lifted off from Earth, carrying Ward and his team. Families gathered in front of screens. Children pointed at the skies, and millions whispered prayers for the mission's success. High above Earth, the human shuttle approached the alien crescent ship. It looked fragile compared to the sturdy human craft, but it radiated elegance, glowing faintly like a pearl in the dark. The two ships aligned, and a bridge extended between them. For a long moment, neither side moved. Then Captain Ward stepped forward, his boots echoing on the metallic floor of the bridge. On the other side, the alien envoy Cyrell waited. Her translucent skin shimmered, her large eyes full of cautious hope. The two stopped just a few feet apart. Ward raised his hand slowly, palm open. "We come in peace," he said. Cyrell tilted her head, then lifted her own slender hand in the same gesture. Her voice was soft, musical, yet the translator device carried her words clearly. "And so do we. Thank you for meeting us." The first bridge between species had been crossed. Inside the alien ship, the human delegation listened as the envoys explained the truth. The coalition of peaceful races had lived in harmony for centuries, but they were under attack by the Krail marauders. They had no armies, no strong fleets. They had tried to run, but the enemy always followed. Entire worlds had been lost. "We searched for someone who could stand against them," Sorrel said, her voice trembling slightly. "And the records told us of your kind, humans. Survivors of the harshest world we have ever known. We beg you, help us." The humans sat in silence for a moment. The weight of the words hung heavy in the room. Captain Ward finally spoke. "You ask us to fight a war that is not ours. Why should humanity risk its people, its future, for strangers?" Sorrel lowered her eyes. "Because if we fall, you may be next. The Krail will not stop. They see the galaxy only as a prize to claim. But beyond that," she looked up again, her eyes full of pleading, "because we believe in compassion, because sometimes even strangers must stand together." Ward and his team exchanged glances. They could see the sincerity in her words. Yet they knew the decision was far greater than anything they could promise. Back on Earth, the reports from the meeting reached the leaders. Once again, debate filled the halls. General Singh of the Earth Defense Network slammed his fist on the table. "We cannot send our people into a war we do not understand. Our fleets are small, our colonies still young. If we go to battle and fail, Earth itself will be left defenseless." But others disagreed. Professor Lin, a historian invited to the council, spoke with quiet passion. "Our history is full of moments when humanity faced impossible odds. We survived plagues, disasters, and wars, and yet we always rose again. If we have the power to protect others from destruction, do we not have a duty to try?" The leaders were divided. Some feared losing soldiers and ships. Others feared losing their humanity by refusing to act. Meanwhile, the ordinary people of Earth reacted in their own way. In crowded cafes, workers argued over the news. In schools, children drew pictures of humans and aliens holding hands. On social networks, voices rose in both fear and excitement. One young woman, a nurse named Amira, posted a message that spread quickly across the world. "If we ignore them, we turn our backs on what makes us human. We are strongest not when we fight for ourselves, but when we fight for those who cannot." Her words echoed the thoughts of many. Slowly, public opinion began to shift. More and more people called for action. They did not want to be remembered as the species that looked away while others suffered. Captain Ward returned to Earth and stood before the global assembly. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of what he had seen. "I looked into their eyes," he said. "They are not conquerors. They are not liars. They are desperate. They ask for help not because they are weak, but because they believe we are strong. And I believe they are right. Humanity has never been a people who turn away from a fight when lives are at stake. We may argue, we may doubt, but when the moment comes, we rise always." His words stirred the chamber. Some leaders still hesitated, but the tide was turning. In the following days, plans were drawn. Not all nations agreed to send forces, but enough did. Volunteers lined up by the thousands, soldiers, engineers, doctors, and explorers. They were not going for conquest. They were going to protect. And across the stars, the coalition envoys received humanity's answer: "We will help." Tears filled Sorrel's eyes as she heard the words. Her people had prayed for hope, and now it had arrived from a world of storms and struggle. For the first time in many centuries, the peaceful races felt safe. And for the first time in history, humanity stepped into the wider galaxy, not as wanderers or dreamers, but as protectors. But they all knew this was only the beginning. The Krail marauders were powerful. The battles ahead would test them all. Yet in that moment, as Earth's first fleets prepared to rise into the stars, one truth became clear. The Deathworlders had answered the call. The decision had been made. Humanity would not stand aside while innocent worlds burned. Earth's leaders announced the choice to their people, and the response was greater than anyone expected. Volunteers filled recruitment centers across the planet. Some were trained soldiers ready to fight. Others were scientists, engineers, and doctors who wanted to give their skills to the cause. Even farmers and builders offered to help in any way they could. For the first time in history, Earth was united not against itself, but for something greater, protecting life beyond their skies. Captain Elias Ward stood in the vast hangar of Earth's main orbital station, watching rows of new recruits. The air was filled with noise, voices calling, machines humming, welders sparking as ships were refitted for the mission ahead. Earth's fleet was not the largest in the galaxy, but it carried something no one else had: human resilience. Ward turned to his second-in-command, Commander Rachel Hale, a sharp-minded officer with years of experience. "They're eager," he said quietly. Hale smiled faintly. "Eager is good. But eagerness fades. We'll need to shape them into more than volunteers. They'll need to be ready for what's waiting out there. Ward nodded. He knew she was right. The Krail were no ordinary enemy. Across the world, factories worked day and night. Ships that once carried supplies were armored with reinforced plating. Old designs were pulled out of storage, then improved with modern technology. Some scientists proposed ideas that seemed impossible. Energy shields adapted from research, weapons made to pierce through the Krail's thick hulls, drones built for scouting and sabotage. Where aliens saw limits, humans saw challenges to overcome. At the same time, alien envoys shared their knowledge. The Veari offered advanced sensors. The Trin shared energy crystals that could power ships for longer journeys. Other coalition species provided medicine, navigation data, and even volunteers willing to learn from humanity. Training grounds were set up in orbit and on the moon. Human soldiers drilled side by side with alien allies. The first days were awkward. Different species moved at different speeds, spoke in strange ways, and had trouble understanding each other's habits. But slowly, bonds began to form. One human soldier, Private Jonah Malik, showed a Trin warrior how to hold a rifle steady. In return, the Trin demonstrated a way to read enemy energy patterns that humans had never seen before. Laughter and frustration mixed together, but day by day they grew into something resembling a single force. "They don't fight like us," one Trin officer admitted to Ward. "But perhaps that is the point. They fight like humans." Meanwhile, Earth's people followed every step of the preparation. News broadcasts showed fleets rising from the oceans, rockets blazing into the night, and soldiers saluting as they left home. Families wept, but many also felt pride. This was not a war for conquest, but for protection. Humanity was stepping into the stars as guardians. On one evening broadcast, a reporter asked a young volunteer why he had signed up. The boy, barely 20, answered with steady eyes, "Because if we don't fight for them today, who will fight for us tomorrow?" His words echoed across the planet. Finally, after months of preparation, the first fleet was ready. Dozens of ships hovered in formation above Earth, shining against the dark sky. Some were sleek and new, others old and patched, but each one carried determination. Painted on their hulls were names like Hope, Endurance, and Guardian. Before departure, a great gathering was held on the orbital station. Soldiers and civilians alike stood together, their eyes fixed on a wide window showing Earth below. The planet glowed blue and green, fragile yet beautiful. Captain Ward stepped onto the platform. His voice carried across the hall. "Look at our world," he said. "Every storm we faced, every mountain we climbed, every hardship we endured. This is what shaped us. We are children of a death world, and because of that, we know what it means to fight for survival. But today we fight not only for ourselves. Today we fight for those who cannot stand alone. Remember this, we are not going to conquer. We are going to protect, to endure, to give hope." The hall erupted in cheers. Even the alien envoys, unused to such loud displays, lifted their hands in salute. The motto spread through the fleet like fire. We endure. We fight, we protect. When the fleet left orbit, Earth watched in silence. Families waved. Children pressed their hands to glass windows, and billions of eyes followed the shining lights as they faded into the darkness. Humanity had answered the call, and now their path led into war. The journey across the stars was long. The Coalition provided jump routes and guidance, but the humans still faced difficulties. Systems broke down, supplies ran thin, and tensions sometimes rose, but each time, ingenuity found a solution. On one ship, when a cooling unit failed, engineers replaced it with spare parts from a farming machine. On another, a group of volunteers repaired torn wiring with little more than tape and clever adjustments. Alien allies watched in amazement. "You turn weakness into strength," Sorrel said to Captain Ward one evening. "Where others see disaster, you see an answer. This is why we called for you." Ward gave a faint smile. "It's not always pretty, but it works." As they neared the besieged world, tension grew. Reports came in. The Krail were there in force, their dark ships circling the planet like vultures. The Coalition's remaining defenders had nearly collapsed. If help did not arrive soon, another world would be lost. Ward gathered his commanders in the strategy chamber. Holograms of the battlefield floated above the table, showing enemy formations and weak points. "They expect us to fight like everyone else they've crushed," Ward said, pointing at the images. "We won't. We'll hit them where they don't expect. Use what we have in ways they've never seen. Surprise is our greatest weapon. Commander Hale leaned forward. And if they adapt? Then we adapt faster, Ward replied. The plan was set. The humans would not fight with overwhelming numbers, but with creativity, determination, and grit. The night before the battle, silence filled the ships. Soldiers checked their weapons. Engineers tightened the last bolts, and doctors prepared their supplies. Some wrote letters home. Others whispered prayers, and many simply sat staring at the stars. Private Malik looked at the Trin warrior beside him. Scared? He asked. The alien's scales shifted to a soft blue, the color of honesty. Yes, and you? Malik smiled faintly. Always. But that means we're ready. On the command ship, Ward stood by the window. Serail joined him, her translucent form glowing softly. You carry much on your shoulders, she said. Ward's gaze stayed fixed on the enemy fleet in the distance. I'm not the only one. Every person out there carries the same weight. That's what makes us human. Serail's eyes glimmered. Perhaps it is what makes you strong. The alarms began to sound. Engines roared to life. Across the fleet, men and women strapped into their seats, hearts pounding. The first battle was about to begin. And as the Deathworlders prepared to strike, one truth echoed in every mind. The galaxy had never seen humans fight, not yet. The human and coalition fleet approached the besieged world like a wave of silver and light, cutting through the darkness of space. The planet below was scarred and battered from weeks of Krail attacks. Cities were burning, and defensive stations barely held their ground. The Krail marauders, confident in their dominance, did not immediately notice the arriving fleet. Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge of the command ship, eyes fixed on the holographic display of the battlefield. His jaw was tight, his mind calculating. This is it, he said quietly. Everyone stay focused. Remember our plan. We fight smart, we fight together. Commander Rachel Hale checked her team. Sensors report enemy ships preparing to engage. They outnumber us. But numbers alone will not win this fight. Ward nodded. No, strength alone doesn't win. Strategy, courage, and resilience do. We have all three. As the fleet moved closer, the Krail finally noticed them. A swarm of dark ships accelerated toward the coalition fleet, their weapons glowing like embers of fire. The first shots lit the void. Explosions flared, shaking the smaller human vessels, but the humans were ready. Ships split into unpredictable patterns, using their agility and maneuverability to dodge incoming fire. Engineers had modified their weapons to exploit weak points in Krail hulls, and the first Krail ships began to falter. From the command ship, Ward watched every move. Focus on their flanks, he ordered. Do not engage head-on unless necessary. Draw them into traps. Use our drones to confuse them. Move fast, hit hard, then disappear. The Allied ships followed his commands like a single organism. Humans and aliens worked together flawlessly. Each species used its strengths. The Trin guided energy blasts. The Vayari used advanced scanners to locate hidden enemy positions. And human pilots led daring attacks that no one else could have imagined. On the planet's surface, the battle was just as fierce. Ground units had prepared defenses around critical cities. Human soldiers trained for Deathworld conditions moved with unmatched speed and precision. Marauders charged, expecting to crush them quickly. But humans used the terrain to their advantage. Explosive traps, reinforced bunkers, and clever ambushes slowed the enemy's advance. Private Jonah Malik ducked behind a ruined wall, firing at an approaching Krail mech. They think they're strong, he muttered. They don't know what humans can do. Beside him, a Trin warrior nodded, following his lead. You are remarkable, the alien said. Your courage. Unmatched, Malik grinned. Welcome to a death world. We survive by being clever. Above the planet, the human fleet executed a daring maneuver. Captain Ward ordered half of the ships to dive low into the atmosphere, drawing the Krail's attention. The rest circled behind them, hidden by planetary shadow, waiting to strike. Cyril watched, amazed. They are not afraid to risk themselves, she whispered. They do not fight for glory, only to protect. Ward's voice came over the comms to the entire fleet. This is our moment. Remember why we are here. Fight smart. Fight together. Fight for life. The second wave hit. Human ships emerged from the shadows, attacking the Krail's weak points. Explosions erupted across enemy lines. One by one, marauder ships began to fall. The coalition forces were stunned. They had faced invaders before, but never like this. Humans did not simply attack. They adapted, improvised, and endured. On the surface, the Krail tried to regroup, sending massive war machines toward the human positions. But Captain Ward had anticipated this. Reinforced ground units and mobile artillery moved to intercept. Human soldiers coordinated with drones, setting traps and guiding artillery strikes. Each move was calculated yet flexible. Every time the Krail adapted, humans found a new strategy. The aliens fought bravely, but it was the humans who led, showing courage that inspired everyone. A young human engineer, Mei Ling, directed energy to a critical shield generator. Sparks flew as Krail fire hit, but the shield held. She shouted instructions to a nearby squad, guiding them to repair and reinforce positions. Around her, soldiers followed without hesitation. "Focus on the generator," she cried. "We hold this line!" The Krail were forced to retreat, losing ground they had once thought secure. Hours passed, yet the battle continued. Space and ground forces were locked in deadly struggle. The Krail were ruthless, but humans were relentless. Every retreat of the enemy was followed by human pursuit, cutting off escape routes and saving captured aliens wherever possible. Sorel floated in the observation deck, watching the chaos below. Tears formed in her eyes as she saw humans rescue civilians from burning buildings, shield alien soldiers under heavy fire, and push forward even when the odds seemed impossible. "They are amazing," she whispered to Ward. He looked out at the battlefield, unmoved by praise. "We just do what's necessary. That's what survival teaches you." The tide began to turn. The Krail, overconfident at first, realized they had underestimated the humans. Their ships began to falter under coordinated attacks. Their ground forces struggled against clever defenses. Marauder commanders shouted orders, frustrated that their numerical advantage was meaningless against an opponent who refused to break. Private Malik, moving through the battlefield, glanced at the Krail mech falling into a trap. He smiled. "We don't quit," he said. "That's the difference." The aliens cheered as they watched the humans hold the line and lead counterattacks. For the first time, the coalition felt hope. Ward moved swiftly, coordinating the final strike. Drones carried explosive charges into enemy formations. Human fighters swooped in at high speed, striking key points. The Krail flagship was hit directly, its shields failing. Sorel gasped. They are winning!" Ward's voice echoed over the comms. "We fight until they cannot rise again. Protect the innocent. End this now." The combined fleet pressed forward. Enemy ships exploded one by one. Ground forces captured Krail command centers. Civilians were rescued. The once powerful marauders now scattered, leaving the world behind. As the last Krail ships fled, the human and coalition fleet regrouped. Smoke and fire still marked the battle zones, but life had been saved. Aliens emerged from hiding, cheering and embracing one another. They looked at the humans with admiration and awe. Sorel approached Ward as he stood on the command bridge. Her voice was filled with emotion. "You have done what we thought impossible. Your courage, your skill, humanity has saved us all." Ward shook his head. "We only did what anyone should do. Fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Sorel's eyes glimmered. "But you did it with such heart. You are more than warriors. You are guardians." Ward looked down at the planet below, battered but alive. "We fight because we must. That's what makes us human." The coalition held a ceremony on the planet's surface. Survivors of the attack gathered, and humans were celebrated as heroes. Stories of bravery spread across the stars, how ordinary soldiers, engineers, and medics had turned the tide. The coalition vowed never to forget the Deathworlders who had answered their call. Children from the rescued cities looked up at human soldiers in wonder. "They saved us," one whispered. "They are our heroes." Captain Ward watched silently, knowing the battle was over, but the work had only begun. The Krail would return someday, perhaps stronger, but for now life had been preserved. For the first time in many years, the galaxy felt safe. And it was humanity, the Deathworlders, who had made that safety possible. The fleet began repairs and humans prepared to return home. Sorel gathered the coalition leaders. "These humans are not just allies," she said. "They are the defenders of life, and they have shown us that strength comes not from numbers or weapons, but from will, courage, and heart." Ward nodded silently. They had won this battle, but he knew the galaxy was vast, full of challenges, and that humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. And somewhere deep in the stars, the Krail fled, humiliated and weakened, realizing for the first time that some enemies cannot be crushed by power alone. For the humans, the battle was a testament. No matter the danger, no matter the enemy, they endured, they fought, they protected, and they survived. The battle was over. The Krail marauders had fled, broken and scattered, leaving the once threatened world in the hands of its grateful inhabitants. Cities that had burned now smoked gently, survivors emerging to rebuild their lives. Humans and allied aliens stood side by side, their faces marked by fatigue yet glowing with pride. Captain Elias Ward stood on the surface of the planet, looking at the damage around him. He could see buildings collapsed, streets torn, and fields scorched. But amid the destruction, life was returning. Children ran through safe zones, laughing despite all they had seen. Families hugged, tears streaming freely. Humanity had made a difference, and it was tangible in every grateful smile. Cyrell, the translucent envoy, floated nearby. "I do not know how to thank you enough," she said softly, her voice almost trembling. "Your people, your courage, it saved us all. Without humans, this world would be lost forever." Ward shook his head gently. "We did what had to be done. That is all. We didn't fight for glory. We fought to protect life because that is what we believe in." Cyrell's eyes glimmered. "You are more than protectors, you are..." "Legends," Ward smiled faintly. "Legends are just stories. We did what anyone should do, but thank you." Back in orbit, the coalition leaders held a gathering. Representatives of dozens of alien species, survivors of the Krail attack, and human officers attended. There were speeches, songs, and moments of silence to honor those who had fallen. Though the human losses were small compared to the enemy's strength, they were still felt deeply. Every life mattered. Counselor Yaren, representing the Veyari, stood to speak. "We have witnessed something remarkable. Humanity, children of a death world, have arrived not to conquer, not to rule, but to protect. They have faced impossible odds and stood firm. They have proven that courage, creativity, and will can overcome even the most terrifying forces. From this day forward, humans will be remembered in our histories as guardians of the galaxy." Applause echoed through the chamber. Cyrell turned to Ward. "Do you hear that? Your people, all of you, are forever part of our history." Ward nodded, looking down at his hands. "History is written by those who live it. We just made sure this story had a good ending." Meanwhile, across the planet, humans worked alongside aliens to rebuild. Engineers repaired power grids, medics tended to the injured, and soldiers cleared dangerous debris. They worked tirelessly, not for reward but because it was the right thing to do. Ordinary humans became heroes not by weapons alone, but by courage, compassion, and determination. Private Jonah Malik helped evacuate children from a partially destroyed school. The Trin warrior who had fought beside him earlier carried supplies. Together they laughed, shared stories, and showed each other ways to survive. Despite being from different worlds, a bond had formed that no language barrier could erase. Malik smiled at the children. "Don't be afraid," he said. "You're safe now. Humanity doesn't abandon anyone who needs help." One small child looked up and whispered, "You're like heroes from stories." Malik knelt and ruffled the child's hair. "Maybe, but remember, heroes are just people who never give up." The Krail, meanwhile, fled to the far reaches of space, humiliated. Their leaders had never faced an enemy like the humans. They had crushed many worlds easily, leaving destruction behind, but humans were different. They adapted, they fought with strategy, and they never surrendered. The Krail realized that brute force alone would not win wars anymore. They would need cunning, patience, and even alliances, something they had always dismissed. Cyrell watched the fleeing enemy with a mixture of relief and awe. "Your people, they taught us something," she said to Ward. "They reminded us that strength is not only power but perseverance, that even the smallest force can protect the greatest life if it refuses to give in." Ward nodded. "Every being, every life has value, and sometimes it takes a world hardened by struggle to see that clearly." Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread across the stars. Humanity had not only saved a world, they had shown the galaxy the true meaning of resilience. Messages of gratitude poured in from the coalition, and new friendships were formed. Children in schools drew pictures of humans standing with aliens, smiling as ships floated above distant worlds. Scientists studied alien technology, eager to understand and share knowledge. Soldiers trained harder, inspired not by war itself but by the protection they could provide to those who could not defend themselves. President Alvarez addressed the world from Earth's capital city. Our people have risen to a challenge that was never ours alone. We have fought not to conquer, not to dominate, but to defend life itself. Today, humanity has proven that even the harshest world produces the strongest hearts. Let this be the beginning, not the end, of our place in the stars. Let us continue to protect, to endure, and to inspire. The rescued world celebrated in its own way. Alien citizens rebuilt homes, planted new crops, and shared meals with human helpers. Songs were sung and stories of bravery were told. Humans had shown them that they were not alone, and that allies could come from the most unexpected places. Cyrell walked among the people, her form glowing softly. Children ran to her, asking questions about the humans who had saved them. She told them stories of courage, ingenuity, and hope. And in every story, the humans were not invaders or strangers. They were protectors, friends, and guardians. Across the planet, humans quietly observed. They did not seek praise or reward. They were simply glad to see life surviving, to see hope returned where despair had once reigned. Weeks passed. Ships were repaired, soldiers rested, and life began to feel normal again. The humans prepared to return to their own worlds, to Earth and to nearby colonies. Yet even as they prepared to leave, the bonds formed during the battle remained strong. Humans and aliens exchanged technology, knowledge, and promises to aid each other whenever needed. Captain Ward stood once more on the command ship, looking at the horizon. The stars seemed brighter now, not just because the Krail threat had been pushed back, but because humanity had found its place among them. Cyrell approached. "Will you return?" she asked softly. Ward turned to her. "We will, not because we seek glory, but because we know what it means to protect. And sometimes the galaxy needs protectors." Cyrell's eyes glimmered with tears. "Then we are lucky to have you. You are not like anyone we have ever known. You are Deathworlders. You endure, and because of that, you give hope." Ward nodded silently, knowing she spoke the truth. On the journey home, the human fleet flew in quiet formation. Conversations were soft, reflective. Soldiers shared stories of courage and fear. Scientists discussed technology they had learned. Engineers laughed about clever solutions that had saved ships during battle. And every human knew deep in their hearts that they had changed the galaxy, not by power but by action, by compassion, and by courage. Across the stars, the Krail regrouped. They would not forget this day, nor the humans who had humiliated them. But for now, humanity's message was clear. No one could simply take what they wanted. Life was precious, and some beings would fight to protect it, no matter the cost. Back on Earth, celebrations awaited. Families reunited with returning soldiers. Children listened wide-eyed to tales of the stars. And the world slowly began to understand that humanity had stepped into a new role. Not as conquerors, not as explorers alone, but as protectors of life across the galaxy. In the years that followed, humans and coalition allies remained connected. Stories of bravery spread from system to system. The name Deathworlders became synonymous not with fear, but with resilience, courage, and honor. Worlds that had once trembled at the thought of marauders now held hope, because they knew someone would answer their call if danger came. And humanity? They continued to endure. They continued to fight when needed, and to protect whenever possible. Not for reward, not for recognition, but because it was right. Because they were Deathworlders, and that meant never turning away from those in need. The galaxy had changed, and humanity's place among the stars had been written forever. Not in conquest, but in compassion. They had fought. They had protected. They had survived, and their legacy was written in the stars.